that may have been improper. That seemed to pass everybody by, but it has led to a big discussion about privacy, about bullying, about also everything to do with Facebook and the way that it affects our lives, and as most people perceive it, a lack of regulatory control over it. Now, Mark Zuckerberg, as you may remember, went before the Houses, the Senate and the Congress Committee, and he got a real grilling up on Capitol Hill. He looked very, very nervous when he was there. Indeed, they even put a cushion on his chair so he could appear a bit taller. And having seen him in the flesh today, he's not particularly tall. I thought when he walked into the room, and this meeting started an hour and 15 minutes ago, it just ended 15 minutes ago. I thought when he walked into the room, he looked remarkably confident. He kind of had the grilling on Capitol Hill. I think he was ready for what was about to happen. And the one thing that he is doing quite a lot of is he's apologizing. This was Zuckerberg right at the start of his testimony this evening.
Now, we've always focused on all the good that technology and connecting people can bring. And as Facebook has grown, it has helped give people everywhere around the world new tools to stay connected to the people they care about most. After the recent terrorist attacks in Berlin and Paris, London, and here in Brussels, tens of thousands of people, but it's also become clear over the last couple of years that we haven't done enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, foreign interference in elections, and developers misusing people's information. We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a mistake, and I'm sorry for it. It's going to take time to work through all of the changes that we need to make here, but I'm committed to getting this right and to making the significant investments that are necessary to keep people safe.
So it's the full apology. I mean, basically what he's saying is that they set this thing up. It grew out of all proportion. It changed and went in directions they perhaps couldn't possibly have foreseen. And maybe, just maybe, when people were warning them that data was being shared, perhaps without permission, I don't know, maybe they looked at the bank balance and thought, we're getting away with it now. We'll get away with it for a long time. And don't forget, actually, this company, the valuation of this company is bigger than many countries in the world. So we are talking about big bucks. Now, unsurprisingly, being here in the European Parliament, the one thing that was going to be discussed was the impact of Facebook and elections around the world in the last couple of years. Here was Zuckerberg on that theme.
Now let's turn to elections. In the next 18 months, there are important elections globally, including many here in Europe, as well as for the European Parliament, the United States, Brazil, India, and Indonesia. In 2016, we were too slow to identify Russian interference on Facebook in the US presidential election. At the time, we were more focused on more traditional kinds of cyber attacks, like phishing and malware. But we weren't prepared enough for the kind of coordinated misinformation operations that we are now aware of. So since then, we've made significant investments to protect the integrity of elections by making these kinds of attacks much harder to do on Facebook. But we're committed to continuing to invest heavily and improving our techniques to make sure that we stay ahead. And we're going to keep building tools to help more people make their voices heard in the democratic process as well.
Well, whatever the interference in elections from Russians was, whether it was supporting Corbyn or Trump, whether any of it made an ape of the difference, frankly, none of us know. I would have thought it was pretty limited. But what I have seen is a very strange phenomenon, and that is that Zuckerberg and many of the other creators of social media platforms are themselves quite big supporters in America of the Democrats, believers in the European project, globalists, some would call them. They're all pretty relaxed about the free movement of people and things like that. And yet it is their own creations that directly led to Brexit, to Trump, and the Italian elections, which happened 2 months ago. It is through those platforms that political parties like the Five Star Movement got off the ground. I mean, Beppe Grillo, who ran that party for years, he didn't bother being interviewed by mainstream media, he just built up 4.5 million people following him on Twitter and Facebook and spoke directly to them. And it seems that once the Cambridge Analytica story broke, what Zuckerberg was really scared of was proof being produced that Cambridge had had a decisive effect on the British referendum or on the Trump election. As it turns out, the main accusations in the UK referendum were that Aaron Banks's vehicle, Leave.eu, which I was associated with, that they somehow had used Facebook and garnered huge amounts of illegal data. The Electoral Commission report into Leave.eu that came out 10 days ago said that whilst Leave.eu had made some mistakes, there was no evidence that Cambridge Analytica had done anything. But I think, in a slight panic measure, scared about what might come out, in January of this year, Facebook changed their modus operandi. They changed the algorithms by which people's videos and comments reach out to that Facebook community. So my question to Zuckerberg was on this subject.
Mr. Zuckerberg, I'm the largest user of Facebook in all the EU institutions in terms of followers, in terms of engagement, so I'm your best client here in the room. I've no idea of the value of that, but I'm pleased to see you, as I hope you are me. There is no way that Brexit or Trump or the Italian elections could ever possibly have happened. It was social media that allowed people to get round the back of mainstream media. Now, what is absolutely true is that since January of this year, you've changed your modus operandi, you've changed your algorithms, and it has led directly to a very substantial drop in views and engagements for those that have got right of centre political opinions. I'm not talking here, Mr. Zuckerberg, about extremism. I'm not talking about encouraging violence. I'm not talking about hatred of anybody. I'm talking about people who have majority mainstream opinions, and frankly, I feel they are being willfully discriminated against. I mean, why is there no transparency in this process at all? I'm not generally somebody that calls for legislation on the international stage, but I'm beginning to wonder whether we need a social media Bill of Rights to basically protect free speech. And I'm asking you today very, very clearly that would you accept that today Facebook is not a platform for all ideas that is operated impartially?
Well, I said that with some feeling. I meant it. I've looked at the numbers, and these are not numbers that I've conjured up out of the air, but independently people have looked. What has happened to political commentators since January? It's perfectly clear. Those on the right of centre are having a very, very tough time. But to be fair to Mark Zuckerberg, he gave me a straight, direct answer.
There was a specific point around distribution and reduction of seeing people's content. And on that, what I'd just say is we've made a number of changes this year to make sure that we're showing people's friends and family and community content more than public content in general. So a lot of the feedback that we've heard from people is that they come to Facebook because they want to stay connected to people. We've also done a lot of well-being research. This wasn't a topic that came up today, but we're very focused on making sure that people's use of technology is good for people's well-being and is not taking away from it in some way. And all the research that we have shows that when you're using the internet to stay connected to people that you care about, that's good for your well-being. It's correlated with measures like increased measures of health and happiness and feeling more connected and less alone over time. But when you're just using Facebook or the internet overall to read news or passively consume videos, that isn't correlated with those same benefits to well-being. So because of that and because of feedback that we've received, we've made a number of shifts to the services to promote connecting with people's friends and family and communities more than public content. So that has led to reductions in distribution for public content, video, news, across the board, and is not targeting any specific political ideology.
So Zuckerberg says I'm wrong. He says there are reductions in output and content for things that involve current affairs because they're making much more of an effort on social, genuine networks. I don't believe that's right at all. And I got on perfectly well with him today. I'm going to write to him. I'm going to follow up. That's what bothers me. But the question tonight is, what is it that bothers you? What do you think needs to be done to Facebook, to the social media giants? Do you think, as many in that room today, many of the European group leaders think, do you think it's regulation and perhaps even heavy regulation with the threat of fines, big fines? If you do think we've got to regulate this because it's out of control, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think actually the more you regulate it, the more it actually reinforces the position of firms like Facebook, making it very expensive and difficult for anybody new to come in. So maybe you favour light touch regulation, in which case you can text to 84850, or maybe like me, you think there needs to be more transparency. Who is making these decisions about what is acceptable political content or not? Who is deciding who actually gets kicked off Facebook as a user, as many people have been? And maybe that needs to be open and actually transparent in every way. And if you feel that actually is the main focus going ahead, then please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And most important of all, watch us on, yes, you've guessed it, Facebook Live. I'm here in the European Parliament in Brussels. You can comment there too. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively at LBC, and the time is now 7:16.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Ken Livingstone deciding to quit the Labour Party, doing so because his suspension, and I quote, have become a distraction from the key political issue of our time to replace the Tory government. Well, former Mayor of London Ken Livingstone joins me now. Had Seamus Milne or Simon Fletcher called you and asked you, can you retract your comments on anti-Semitism and apologise, what would you have done?
I can't retract something that's a simple historical fact.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With The Times. Be not just informed, but well informed.
Life is about sharing those magical moments, and food shouldn't be any different. For over 35 years, Marouche has been perfecting this experience with their delicious food, warm hospitality, and live entertainment. Authentic Lebanese cuisine made the traditional way. Marouche, your family restaurant. Book now at marouche.com.
Do you or a loved one have Alzheimer's disease and problems sleeping? Then St Pancras Clinical Research in London would like to hear from you. We're looking for volunteers aged 50 plus with mild to moderate Alzheimer's disease to take part in a clinical research study. If you qualify, you'll be paid for your time and reasonable expenses. Find out more at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Hi, I'm Peter Jones. Sage helped me manage one of my first companies when I was 19. Now, Sage Business Cloud helps me manage everything from money to people. It's the platform your business needs to grow and succeed. So, when people ask me, what's the secret of your success? I say it's about making wise choices. It's about being Sage.
Realise your ambition with Sage Business Cloud. Visit sage.com/ambition.
OK, children, settle down. Thank you for bringing your pets in for Bring Your Pet to School Day. Megan, who is this delightful little ball of fur?
It's Trico, my guinea pig, miss.
Adorable. And Alfie, who's this?
It's Ronaldo, my rabbit, miss.
What a darling. And what's in the wooden crate, Poppy?
Fluffy.
That's a very strong lock. This way, children.
With a Land Rover Discovery, adventure can take you, well, anywhere. Never stop discovering. Search Land Rover Discovery. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Look at you with your feet up. Pizza and a glass of wine?
Well, it does say to serve it chilled.
Peter Yeeland's Sauvignon Blanc is reduced from $9.49 to $6.49, and Co-op Irresistible Pizzas from $5.25 to just £4. Pick them up at the Co-op. Participating stores subject to availability. Ends May 29th. Please drink responsibly.
Oh! Get your cricket fix this summer on Sky Sports Cricket with every England Summer International for £18 a month.
Big shot.
Watch England take on Pakistan, Australia and India with every home test, one-dayer and T20 match live.
Yes, good take.
Plus the ICC World Cup and the County Champs, all for £18 a month.
Hold it.
Search by Sky Sports. Requires Sky TV subscription. 31 days notice to cancel. Further terms apply.
This is LBC, live from Brussels, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
You can't avoid social media these days. I'll bet most of you listening to this now are connected with social media. I know lots of you are actually watching this live now on Facebook and other social media platforms, and some of your messages coming in. Barry says, Zuckerberg is a classic apologist. He says sorry, but nothing ever changes. It's time for laws to protect us, and he and Facebook are brought into line. Barry, I did get the feeling that not much will change. He's promised lots more compliance officers. He's promised a lot more checks. He did say that if a violent video gets posted, within 10 minutes, it will have gone. It will have been removed. He did say that he wants to try and do his best to protect people from bullying, but frankly, even if you put regulation in place, there are all sorts of things like fake accounts. There is an element, it seems to me, of social media that is a little bit like the Wild West. Not easy, even with legislation, in my view, to control it. I just wonder whether we need some basic parameters to make sure that our rights of free speech are protected, because it seems to me that actually, politically, they potentially have a great control over the future of what we think and how we debate things. But let me know what you think. What is it about? What is it about social media, Facebook in particular, that you like? What is it you hate? Are you a parent worried about the impact it's having upon your kids' lives? Let me know on 0345 6060 973. Chris in Leeds feels that Facebook used to serve a purpose, has an excellent corporate goal of connecting people. Zuckerberg has a God complex and needs to remember why he started in the first place, to connect, not coerce. Let's go up to Halifax and speak to Matthew, a first-time caller to this show. Matthew, are you a Facebook user?
I'm not. I use a little bit of social media for work when I can't avoid it, but I'm not really a big follower.
It is difficult, Matthew, in the modern world to avoid it completely, isn't it?
It is, yes. And an awful lot of my friends do most of their communication that way. Me, I prefer a phone call or a text.
Yep, okay, well, I have to say, Matthew, that on balance, I do. But the thing about social media, of course, is that it does allow you to speak simultaneously to an awful lot of people who you couldn't possibly ring at the same time. Matthew, had you been sitting in my shoes today and had the chance to talk to Zuckerberg, what would you have said to him?
I'm not really sure. See, really, there's two things we need to consider. One of them is that regulation of anything that sits on the internet, where it's really hard to define where it actually is almost doomed to failure. Plus, when has government regulation ever made anything better?
I think we could argue the Clean Air Act of the 1950s made London a bit cleaner. The things like that we could say. But Matthew, yeah, okay. I share this with you. I'll give you an example. On Facebook, Gina's just said to me, fake news is not something that would enhance one's welfare. It needs more regulation. How do you regulate fake news?
Well, how do you define fake news? Is it just things that disagree with me,
Well, that's the point. I think it's quite easy, Matthew, to work out what is inciting violence. It's quite easy to see what might provoke genuine hatred, but it is very, very difficult. One man's truth is somebody else's lie. I agree with you, it's not easy. So what would you do? Not very much.
No, I would actually suggest that if there is a problem, and if Facebook is discriminating against those who maybe have views to the right of the centre, what someone should do is set up an alternative to Facebook. A competing platform that would then attract the views of those people, or attract the views of those people.
There are some other platforms out there that are trying to compete, but of course Facebook is massive. Do you realise 1.4 billion people are using Facebook nearly every single day? It is a mind-blowing number. So it's quite tough for any startup to get anywhere near them. And here's the irony, Matthew. The more the internet is regulated, and there is some regulation coming in this Friday. There is a piece of EU legislation that we're part of that is designed to try and make consent a little bit more difficult to get in terms of people getting your data. But the more regulation, Matthew, we put in place, the harder we make it for people to come up and challenge Facebook.
Absolutely. I mean, regulation always hurts the little players because, the larger players have much more resources to deal with it.
Yep, and that's the problem with it. Matthew, thank you very much indeed for your call. Let's go to Glasgow. Gordon, who's not called this show before. Good evening, Gordon.
Good evening, Nigel. Pleased to make your acquaintance. I'm sorry if I come across a little bit nervous. It's my first time I've ever called a radio station.
Well, do you know what? It's a first time for everything, and there must be. But the reason, Gordon, you picked the phone up is because you clearly feel something about this.
Well, I do. People underestimate the power that a lot of social media organisations, websites, and also traditional print media have. I think you're absolutely spot on that there has to be some kind of regulation and also perhaps an independent body where complaints or representations can be made to if certain political groups or people affiliated to certain things feel that they're being unfairly censored. And again, I agree entirely with your point that you made to Mr. Zuckerberg today that we're not talking about hate speech. I'm absolutely not talking about anything that's on the extremes of the left or the right of politics. When I was speaking to your researcher a few minutes ago, I was making the point to that as well as clearly an awful lot of censorship going on, much more so with people with anything right of centre on social media, everything was entirely presented that Brexit would never happen, Trump would never be elected, Theresa May wouldn't win the last election, albeit then not with an overall majority, because people don't want to actually express their opinions in public if their opinions aren't left of centre and consistent with this glitterati political class globalist agenda. Going back to the kind of Scottish referendum, a lot of people on Facebook and all these various online platforms felt it was going to be a raging success for the SNP. From my point of view, I'm very proud to be Scottish and very proud to be British. I don't see myself as European at all, and I voted to remain within the UK and to leave the European Union. But you simply can't then express those views in public or in social media because you'll be entirely denigrated and destroyed socially. And people seem to think that you really can't say anything.
Well, you see, Gordon, what people do, Gordon, particularly on Twitter, is they don't use their real name. They use their own Twitter handle, and so a lot of people feel that on Twitter or on other forms of internet, they can say stuff that might be difficult to say in the pub or to their colleagues at work. So that gives them a certain freedom. The other problem, of course, though, with that is people who are commenting without using their own name. I mean, they're all so brave, Gordon. Yeah. Believe you me, the stuff they send me, I mean, you think they're all Victoria Cross winners, and you actually meet them, they wouldn't say boo to a goose. There are difficulties with this. Exactly. I want to see some basic protections that make sure that these social media giants are not able to completely, get rid of many reasonable, balanced opinions that are out there. That's the regulation that I think we need to see.
The other problem, Nigel, is that whenever people speak about confirmation bias or fake news, they seem to believe that it only exists right of centre in British, European and American politics, but it does not. Well, it exists very much across the political spectrum, and it depends, frankly, how good an organisation is at purporting the news in the way that they want to. But I really don't think that we can then just say that it's only centre and right of centre. Using companies like Cambridge Analytica.
Gordon, the reason you're hearing that is because Brexit happened, because Trump happened, a lot on the left are furious and they're desperately looking for an excuse, and this is what they come to. Gordon, thank you very much indeed for your call. We'll hear from you again. I've got time to go to Andrew in Lincoln. Andrew, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. At the moment, I'm in the middle of a 3-day ban for supposedly hate speech. Now, I don't believe it was hate speech, and it wasn't meant as such. But I'll give you the facts. Yep. A gentleman put on, or a lady, I don't know which, but it was, I can't sort of name the race, else I'll be banned again. But I put on, somebody was complaining about us not supporting Ramadan. And I put on, along with many others, that this was an English country and we didn't support Ramadan. And if people thought that we should have to conform to their views, when this was England, I think it's time that I didn't agree with their views, and I didn't agree with them being here. Now, that was a bit hard for my normal way, but yes, I think it
I suppose it depends a bit, doesn't it, Andrew? It depends a bit what you were saying. If you were saying, personally, I'm not going to support Ramadan or change my life in any way for it, that is a perfectly fair comment. If those judging you thought that you wanted Ramadan to be banned from the United Kingdom, they would then say, Andrew, that you'd expressed an opinion that was religiously deeply intolerant, wouldn't they?
Nigel, I wasn't saying Ramadan shouldn't be here, carried out in this country.
Yeah.
I have a right to be a Christian. People who we've allowed in the country, I might not agree with allowing them in the country, but once the country's made that decision, they have the right to support their views, but they have no right to say that I must follow their views.
And you're on a 3-day ban, Andrew, yeah?
But I'm on a 3-day ban, and I would like to point out that the American president said very similar things and has banned the people from those countries entering America.
Yeah. Andrew, I'm pleased you've called, because the point you've raised is something we're going to debate over the next hour. Should Andrew have been banned for 3 days from Facebook because of what he said, that he didn't want to support Ramadan? Let me know your answers, 0345 6060 973. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 7:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
Donald Trump is suggesting his planned historic meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un next month could be delayed. The US president says there's a very substantial chance it won't work out following talks with South Korea's leader at the White House. A mass sing-along event is taking place in Manchester's Albert Square right now to remember the 22 people killed in the Manchester Arena bombing. At 10:31 tonight, bells will be rung across the city to mark the moment of the explosion 12 months on. Earlier, a special service was held at Manchester Cathedral. Facebook co-founder Mark Zuckerberg admits his social media company needs to be better at dealing with inappropriate comments. He's been questioned by MEPs in Brussels this afternoon, including Nigel Farage, who'll continue leading Britain's conversation on that story next. LBC Weather. Dry this evening and overnight, a low of 8 degrees. Tomorrow, warm and sunny with isolated thundery showers in the south, a high of 24 degrees.
LBC travel on the M25. It's queuing anti-clockwise between junction 16 for the M40 and junction 15 for the M4 after an accident and a diesel spillage. The inside lane is closed. As a result, it's very slow on all the approaches to the Denham roundabout and all around Uxbridge, Hayes and Langley. The A1 in Islington remains closed in both directions between Islington Green and Canterbury Lane. That's because of a police investigation. On the tubes, the Central Line has no service eastbound between White City and Marble Arch. LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler.
This is LBC.
Your future is here. The Global Academy, a forward-thinking state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Visit globalacademy.com to find out more.
Hi, I know you own a small business and I'm wondering if you're interested in some very well-paid new work. Funnily enough, did you know that about 59% of new customers don't leave a voicemail? Luckily, I'm not one of them. So call me on 074...
Don't cut off new business. Manage and divert your calls with eReceptionist so you'll never miss an opportunity again. Sign up for a free 30-day trial now at ereceptionist.co.uk. T's and C's apply. See website for details.
Car Giant, the only place for giant car choice and out-of-this-world savings. With up to 8,000 cars in stock, visit Car Giant today. Car Giant.
Creating a perfect holiday with Travel Republic is just like creating anything. You start off with the basics, like, I want a beach holiday. Then you add a little more. A 4-star hotel. Then you add a few more flourishes. Near the beach, a local restaurant, flights from your favourite airport, and it's all been reviewed by people like you. And before you know it, you've made something really special. Book your perfect holiday. Search Travel Republic now. Travel Republic, yours for the making. At all protected.
Here's another true story from Aldermartin, Baines and Cuthbert. When fire tore through a residential London development in 2015, the local health and safety executive were quickly on the scene. Fortunately, ABC had all the right health and safety paperwork and certificates, and to the great relief of the building's owners, were able to prove there was no fault. No fuss, no hassle. For block management, ABC Estates will give your story an ending that'll make you as happy as Larry. Find out more at abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious, adventurous, somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Brussels, only on LBC.
Mark Zuckerberg comes to Brussels. I ask him a question about political bias on Facebook, which I believe, since January of this year, is pretty clear for all to see. But others think regulation, more regulation, is what we need. What do you think? Tell me. What are the things that you want to see happen to Facebook? We've had the huge row over Cambridge Analytica. A lot of people very worried, I think, that their data is being misused and handed on to goodness know who. So let me know, what changes do you want to see to Facebook and social media? Before I get back to that, US President Donald Trump has said that an historic summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un next month may be delayed. He was speaking as he received South Korea's President Moon Jae-in at the White House to discuss the summit. Mr. Moon is likely to tell President Trump what to expect and what not to expect from Kim, a South Korean news agency has said. And last week, of course, it was the North that said that it might cancel the meeting if the US insisted on North Korea unilaterally giving up its nuclear weapons. Trump said this afternoon, if it does not happen, maybe it will happen later. Reuters, the news agency, said there was a substantial chance that the summit would not happen in June. And remember, it was due to take place on the 12th of June in Singapore. Prior to last week, we'd heard really good news that North Korea were going to dismantle a nuclear test site. Things seem to be going very well. Let's keep our fingers crossed and let's hope that summit does take place on June the 12th. But clearly, there is now some doubt. Helen says to me, Facebook and other social media platforms need to be regulated by an independent organisation. Well, you see, the point is, Helen, at the moment, they're effectively self-regulating. They can't be allowed to stop people's rights to freedom of speech. Well, Helen, before the break, we had our caller on. He's been banned for 3 days. He's not going to come out and openly support Ramadan in this country. Should he have been banned from Facebook for 3 days for saying that? I want to know your answers to that. Keith says to me, I shut down my account. Conservative Christian views are deemed unacceptable. Facebook is run by illiberal bigots. Frank says on Facebook, the political elite have been rocked by populism, and that has undermined their selected and biased media control. They have silenced independent free speech through hate laws, and now want to shut them down on social media. So there are quite a lot of users who are getting very worried that they're not able to express their views. Jason in Sutton is calling. What would you have asked Mark Zuckerberg today, Jason?
Hi, good evening, Nigel. Oh, you're almost making me feel almost sorry for you today. That's an unusual situation.
Right.
Poor Nigel, YG, you're such a snowflake. Nobody's looking at your views on Facebook anymore. It's terrible.
Well, actually, Jason, they are, right? And Jason, I did make the point that actually I'm the biggest user of Facebook in all of the European institutions. Now, I have been affected by this, not massively, but, my numbers are down. If I put stuff out, my numbers are down. And the Zuckerberg answer is that they've changed their bias in favour of, people communicating and happy stuff. But if you look...
Actually, hang on, that's not what he said. What he said was that they've created an algorithm and they're focusing on putting things on people's timelines on Facebook that make them more happy, improve their well-being. If you follow that line of thread, if things that are being shown are making people happier and improving their well-being, what you've been saying, if your views are being removed by this automatic algorithm, it's not somebody sitting there, you're making people miserable and angry.
Well, I don't know about that. I saw lots of happy people on Brexit Day. I saw lots of happy people on Brexit Day.
All the angry people.
The point is,
you've been talking about tonight,
Jason. The point is,
free speech.
The point is, he argued that actually on politics and current affairs, the numbers were down consistently across the board.
Yep.
All right. But several independent, social media research organisations produced me a huge dossier of work that show that actually, and this is particularly true in America, but I believe the same principle applies in the UK, it is the conservative sites that are disproportionately down a lot more than the liberal sites.
Because they're the ones that are making people miserable and angry.
No, these are two separate things.
You've just been reading.
These are two separate things. One,
who are angry.
You're missing the point. He's saying that things that make people happy and are good for their well-being are on the up. But that current affairs and politics, which he puts in a separate box, all right, he's saying those numbers are down across the board. Jason, they are a massive organisation, all right? They have huge potential power. They are, for a lot of people, it's a liberation to be on Facebook, and your daughter lives in Australia or whatever it may be, and it's a wonderful free way of keeping in touch with your family. For other people, they worry about their teenagers, they worry about the content they're seeing, they worry about the time they spend on it. These are powerful organisations. Am I right to raise a flag here and to say that unless they stay politically neutral, they could become very dangerous?
You did raise that point, and he answered it categorically, straight up to you, said, no, we're not politically biased. We have an algorithm that focuses on cheerful, more happy threads, and therefore, if you follow that line of thought, clearly the things that are being removed and seen less are making people less happy.
No. Sorry, Jason.
Their well-being.
Jason, wrong. These are separate categories. Anyway, he did later go on to say, we've never made decisions in Facebook on the basis of political orientation. So I got my answer, and what I'm now going to do is I'm going to write to him and give him all the facts and figures by independent social media researchers. Thank you very much. I get by text, Zuckerberg has the political views of the mainstream media, Hollywood, and the establishment in general. He allows liberals to offload on his platform, but conservatives like Ted Cruz are simply stopped. It's not fair, and it needs to change. Well, Ted Cruz isn't totally stopped. Cassie in Norfolk says, my issue is that Facebook has us held to ransom because many of us would delete Facebook. However, because of the society we live in for the last 10 years, every single photograph we've taken is on them. We need to have the ability to easily download photos, memories, so we can delete without losing our data, our own data. Cassie, a lot of people have said, well, I want to get rid of Facebook now, but no, I can't. It would leave too big a gap in my life. And Rick says on Facebook keep trying to suggest left-wing news and Facebook pages on my timeline. A new one every day. It's despicable. Well, Rick, that's what you're saying and your judgment. But something since January has changed. I'm convinced of that. Stuart is calling from Burnley. Good evening, Stuart.
Good evening, Nigel. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Good to have you on. So, Stuart, imagine yourself an hour and a half ago sitting in that chair as I was, opposite Zuckerberg. What would you have said to him?
I don't know. I'd probably have frozen, to be honest. But my opinion is...
well, you're not freezing now, so go on.
Because, the powerful people, aren't they? My opinion is that they've created a monster, or they've released a monster, and now they're trying to put it back in the cage. And what I mean by that is, when the social media sites started, Facebook, etc., I would imagine they saw them as a massive money-making opportunity through advertising and all the opportunities that it brought. And to be honest, I'm going to have to blame you for this, Nigel, to be honest, because...
Thank you.
I wasn't particularly interested in politics, apart from I didn't like Tony Blair much. When I saw you in the European Council with your speeches, etc., and I started looking for you all over the place, and I think it's that sort of thing that's, caused UKIP to win the election.
Do you know, Stuart, it was the growth...
They're trying to put it back in the box, aren't they?
It was the growth of YouTube, and it began a little bit in 2007, but by 2008 and 2009, it was really, really big. And it was YouTube that got me to a big British and indeed international audience. What you saw, Stuart, were YouTube speeches of me in the European Parliament, and what it allowed me to do was to go completely around the back of the mainstream media, of the BBC 10 o'clock news and all the rest of it, and to reach an audience. I would never, ever have been able to take UKIP to where I took it to winning a European election, to forcing a referendum. Stuart, I could never have done it without social media. So you're absolutely right in what you're saying. Yeah. And now they say, oh, my goodness me, what have we done? We've created Frankenstein. We've got to do something about it. But they can't.
The only thing that worries me, Nigel, is I think these group of people are very powerful. I don't think there's a great deal that we could do that will stop them introducing whatever measures they're going to introduce. And I get a feeling that they may introduce some sort of filters that's going to save everybody, that you've got to introduce to your account. And what it's going to do, it's just going to block off the conservative and sort of right-leaning views, and you're just going to have no choice in it whatsoever. I don't think. Well,
I mean, how did you feel, Stuart?
I'm not even on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, actually.
How did you feel, Stuart? Because we had a caller on before 7:30 from the other side of the Pennines, who said on Facebook that he wasn't personally going to support Ramadan, and he's been banned for 3 days.
Yeah, I find it really strange because I actually felt a little bit uncomfortable. Now, I'm a real advocate of free speech, but it's starting to get to everybody, I think. I'm starting to feel a bit uncomfortable hearing other people say it and thinking, oh, don't say that. Yeah. And this is the effect that it's having on everybody, you know.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, Stuart, that's the great thing. That's the great thing about picking up the phone and calling LBC. We've still got free speech. And you, Stuart, in Burnley, have just proved it. Thank you very much indeed for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Michael Gove has a new plan to deal with toxic air, but with pollution already at illegal levels, is another consultation really what's needed?
Clive Bull on LBC.
After working as a solicitor, Muhsin Ismail changed to a career in teaching. He tells us why.
There are two parts that make teaching really interesting and something that I get up in the morning, want to do every single day. The first part is the actual bit in the classroom where you get to inspire young people, which is really engaging for me. But there's also the leadership part of it, which was always really my interest when I left law.
Get into teaching and enjoy a truly rewarding career. Find out more at lbc.co.uk.
Selling your business doesn't have to be as stressful as running it. Break free. Sell the Hilton Smythe way. Visit thehsway.co.uk.
My house, my office, they're a mess.
You need London Storage Vaults. Their self-storage units are in an underground vault near Oxford Circus, so they're completely safe. They're also climate controlled, so they're ideal for anything from paperwork to fine wines.
Sounds great.
They'll collect your stuff for free if you're in zones 1 and 2. There's 24/7 access and all from just £10 a week.
London Storage Vaults, the future of self-storage. Visit londonstoragevaults.com. Terms and conditions apply.
OK, children, settle down. Thank you for bringing your pets in for Bring Your Pet to School Day. Megan, who is this delightful little ball of fur?
It's Treacle, my guinea pig, miss.
Adorable. And Alfie, who's this?
It's Ronaldo, my rabbit, miss.
What a darling. And what's in the wooden crate, Poppy?
Fluffy.
That's a very strong lock. This way, children.
With a Land Rover Discovery, adventure can take you, well, anywhere. Never stop discovering. Search Land Rover Discovery. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Ever had your milk delivered? As much as you need, right to your doorstep? Well, that's kind of how blood works, too. If you really needed some, you'd expect it just to be there, wouldn't you? Enough for you or me, your kids, your mum, or your neighbour. But we require nearly 700 new donors every day to give a pint, just to keep the country going. Bleed for the things that matter to us all. Join us at blood.co.uk. Save a life. Give blood.
Vision Consulting Chartered Accountants have seen astonishing growth over the years. So now, their ever-expanding client base means they're looking for remarkable people to join the Vision Consulting team in all areas of the business. In particular, they have immediate start vacancies for senior tax directors and payroll clerks. But they'd love to hear from anyone with a proven track record in accountancy. For a bright new future, visit visionconsulting.co.uk and apply today.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Brussels, only on LBC.
I put it to Mark Zuckerberg today that his constant claim that Facebook is a platform for all ideas had changed since January, when actually now we see conservative commentators getting a pretty rough deal. This was his response.
There were a couple of questions about political bias that I want to touch on, because I think that this is a very important topic. As a couple of you mentioned, we are committed to being a platform for all ideas. That means that we want to make it so that people can come to our service and share any idea across the political spectrum. It's very important to me that we're a service that allows for a wide variety of political discourse. We view that as a big part of our responsibility, and I can commit to you here today that we have never and will not make decisions about what content is allowed or how we do ranking on the basis of a political orientation. So that's an important philosophical point for me that I'm proud to be able to commit to.
Well, there you are. He says, no, it's not true. Nigel, you're wrong. There is no political bias at all, and yet people are ringing up saying they're being banned for making comments that they believe to be personal opinions and not offensive or insightful in any way at all. I'm going to write back to Zuckerberg and show him some facts and figures and keep this correspondence going. So it's been a busy afternoon, and I was there. I sat in front of Facebook CEO Zuckerberg. I got to ask him questions, and there was much else discussed, including Facebook's data privacy. And if you want to find out how the whole of my afternoon has gone, listen carefully to my questions and to Zuckerberg's answer. You can download my latest podcast, Farage Against the Machine. It's there on iTunes. If you've got an Android device, check out lbc.co.uk or check out my Instagram story at LBC. There we are. I'm using lots and lots of social media. It's really rather difficult to avoid, isn't it? Nicola is calling from Harrogate. Good evening, Nicola.
Hello, Nigel. Hi.
Hi.
I'm phoning up actually to reply to or respond to the privacy situation with Facebook as opposed to the political situation. My point is, the minute you hand over your information to another body, you have lost control. And why people do that and expect or are surprised when something happens that they don't agree with is beyond me. I just don't understand it. So my suggestion would be to anybody who is concerned about their private photographs, their private information being used in a way that they probably wouldn't agree with, come off Facebook, which is what I did 3 years ago.
Yeah, but Nicola, it's very difficult, isn't it, to avoid all forms of social media, to avoid going online. I mean, do you know, in central London now, they've done away with parking meters. So you park your car in central London, and to pay, you have to get on your phone, go online and pay. It's difficult to avoid using the internet or social media in any way at all, isn't it?
Well, it is, but parking your car in central London and paying, with a a meter is slightly different to posting all your personal details, your date of birth, your education, your university, your job, your family, your when was your 50th, when was your 21st, all that kind of business, how many kids you've got. It's all a bit different. And I would say that I think people have just got to wise up and just think that if they don't want their information used, well, they're losing control. The minute they hand it over, you are losing control of that information. And I don't believe a word Mark Zuckerberg says. I'm sorry, Mark Zuckerberg, if you're listening. Don't think you are, but if you are, I'm sorry.
He's probably probably at dinner now.
But I don't believe a word he says. And I just think, I don't believe he is in charge of what's going on anyway.
Well,
I think he's got so many fantastic people.
He's got this tiger by the tail, hasn't he? The whole thing. He basically admitted a few months ago that the whole thing had been completely out of control. Nicola, I take your point, and there are lots of young people, of course, who post stuff all over Facebook. It's young lads a night out at the rugby club. It's girls after a night's dancing. It's all sorts of photographs and comments about their status at any moment in time, whether they're with somebody or not. And I do worry for lots of these people, this stuff is going to live with them for years to come.
Well, that's true. And it's completely different to... I'm around your age group, actually, Nigel, which is... the wrong side of 50.
Yeah, I know.
So it wasn't applicable when I was, in my late teens, early 20s. But really, people have just got to get a grasp and just realise that what they put out there is out there forever. And it's your responsibility, their responsibility, your responsibility to look after your own reputation.
Yep. No, Nicola, point well made. Thank you very much indeed for the call. And Guy Verhofstadt's not particularly happy. He's just tweeted, because he was there at the meeting too, of course. He's the Brexit negotiator, a fairly prickly character. He says, today's pre-cooked format was inappropriate and ensured that Zuckerberg could avoid our questions. I trust that written answers from Facebook will be forthcoming. If these are not accurately answered in detail, the EU competition authorities must be activated and legislation sharpened. So for him, it's all about control. James is calling from Cardiff and is a new caller to the show. James, good evening.
Evening, Nigel. Bit of a surprise speaking to you, to be honest.
Well, welcome. So, James, what do you think needs to be done with Facebook?
Well, I'm sort of commenting on what was said earlier about this idea that right-wing views or conservative views are being suppressed. And I'll put it out there, I'm not conservative, I'm a left-wing in my philosophy. But if it was the case that there was this program of suppressing right-wing views or conservative views, why is that an issue? It is a private company, in the same way that ITV or other private newspapers may suppress.
Do you know, James, when I was thinking about where I was going to go with this afternoon, one of the things that went through my head was very much that as a private company, a newspaper has an editorial position and they're allowed to do so. And Facebook is it's a private company. It's got shareholders, but it is a private company. So I did think that, James. But what stopped me going down that route is that Zuckerberg himself insists over and over and over. In fact, when he gave testimony on Capitol Hill, dozens of times he said, we are a platform for all ideas. We always have been, and we always will be. So kind of what I was saying to him was, if that's how you set yourself up, you need to stick with it. Because, take President Trump, whether you like or maybe you don't like with your philosophy President Trump, but clearly he constantly says very, very interesting things. Now, at the start of this year, for every post he did on Facebook, it would get roughly 70,000 engagements, okay? For every post he's now doing in May, he's getting 45,000 engagements. Now, is that because Trump is less interesting than he was before? I doubt it. So I do look, James, at this evidence, and I do think it's going on.
Okay. It is... You could look at it that way. You need hard evidence to back that up, I guess. You can speculate as to the reasons why. He's certainly not less interesting than he was at the start of his premiership. But I just don't see what the issue is. You're saying that he says that they're a balanced platform, but I think we'd be naive to think that they are. I mean, they are. Silicon Valley is a predominantly left-wing area of the United States.
Well, James, I tell you what, matey, why doesn't just say so? If Zuckerberg just says, we're a private company, these are our views, none of us could complain. But it's a vast organisation that has built up saying that it's got neutrality, and frankly it hasn't. James, great call, thank you, and a very powerful point too. It is a private organisation. He could easily do that, but he doesn't. They've set themselves up telling us that they are politically neutral. And Luke says to me, I agree with you, Nigel, but we can't regulate Facebook because there will still be Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram. I deleted Facebook, but I was back on it in a week. Social media is an addiction. By allowing users to set time limits per day and lock their accounts, maybe the addiction could be treated. Well, I'm not too sure that any of that actually works. Thanks very much, everybody, for your input. You've been listening to me tonight here on the LBC from Brussels. I'm back in London